Sports car racing is back, in the simulator and at the track. Across the world, SRO Motorsports teams and drivers are getting back into the swing of competition, and that includes those participating digitally in Assetto Corsa Competizione. This is the 2022 Mobileye GT World Challenge America Esports Championship from Circuit Zolder, round 1 of 5 this season. Hi everybody, my name is Kyle Heyer, joined by Jesse Lee for the first of 5 rounds, this time at Circuit Zolder here in Belgium. Jesse, welcome aboard. This is going to start another amazingly competitive season in the Mobileye GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. Really excited to be here with you and get this season underway.
Hello, Kyle. Hello, everyone, as well. I could not be more excited as well. A brand new season, a lot of promise. Everyone starting from square zero. The promise of a new season cannot be understated. Everyone tied today. They won't end today like that, but all that said, there are a lot of new names and a lot of returning names all vying to be number one.
A lot of new names and returning names, as you mentioned. The season in the real world just got kicked off last week at Sonoma Raceway. Here's a look at your entry list, though, for the Esports Championship this season. It's about 47 cars long or so, and right at the top of the board there you see Chris Sievert, the number 3, in the Aston Martin AMR Vantage, Zach Patterson, Carl Whitmer, Cardin Liu, all returning with HPD SRO America, Killian Ryan Meenan with FFS Racing. A bunch of teams and drivers are returning, Jesse, but there's a fair share of new teams and drivers here as well.
There sure is. George Boothby comes to mind as one of the drivers that could absolutely do some damage into this championship, but they're absolutely not the only one, and you can look to some of the returning teams as well. They're going to be interesting to watch. Of course, we got Elu Gobi. She's in the McLaren in the 49 in the silver class. Be paying attention to that particular driver as well to see where they come in this series. And, well, star-studded affair, if you ask me, Kyle.
I think so as well. 2 different categories. We've got our pro class and our silver class here as well. A bunch of different makes, models, and manufacturers being represented here in this season, including Aston Martin, Lamborghini, Porsche, Acura, Ferrari, BMW with that brand new M4 GT3. That's going to be a topic of discussion, including ST Racing Esports. Now, ST Racing just competed for the first time this season last week at Sonoma with their brand new BMW M4 GT3 with Samantha Tan behind the wheel. So excited to have them here with us. Williams Esports is here as well. So not only the drivers that we're recognizing, but also the teams. We've also should take note of Yas Pro America, as I mentioned, Madhouse Racing, and a few others we've seen in the past. But just the drivers and teams in general, they cover a variety of experience levels, but we've seen this championship in years past be incredibly equal across the top of the board and qualifying sessions within thousandths of a second, and looking forward to our 60-minute race where we're going to decide a very close race here at Zolder.
You sure are. Look at the drivers in the final preparations for race number 1, trying to get everything ready and sorted after qualifying here today. And going back to your point, Kyle, last year's championship was very close indeed. Came down to the final round and only a few points separated the top couple. I don't see any reason why that won't be the case this season as well.
Yeah, so a lot of drivers getting prepped in their simulators, a lot of Fanatec equipment we see there. Big thanks for their partnership, as well as Asus and ROG, Pirelli and Rebellion, and many more that we're going to get to talk about in this event. Well, we're here at Circuit Zolder. This track opened in 1963. It's hosted Formula One and SRO competition, but it's a couple miles long. We're going to bring it to you in the form of Ryan Gill and Philippe Samard in his BMW M4. They'll take you through the Mobileye track overview here at Circuit Zolder.
Welcome to your Mobileye track overview here at the Circuit Zolder. We're going to jump on board with Philippe Samard in the BMW M4 GT3. Heading down towards turn 1, you want to brake 30 meters before the banner above and turn in early to nail the apex and run right up to the gravel on the exit. Then brake just before the final Pirelli board on the right to take a nice wide exit through turn 2 and keep the car flat on the power as you go out of turn 3. You want to aim for the 2 escape lanes on the left-hand side of the circuit and take a nice clean line through turn 4, avoiding the gravel on the exit as you launch your way down the straight towards the first of 3 chicanes. Moving to the right-hand side of the circuit, brake at the final marker board on your right and cut as much of the chicane as you can handle without voiding track limits. Crest over the hill and hug the inside line of turn 6 and brake as soon as you reach the red and white banded barrier on the left. Turn in early and cut the chicane as much as possible, riding the anti-cuts if you can. Then go nice and wide on the exit and take a clean line through turn 8. Then you want to aim to keep to the left-hand side of the circuit as you brake around the 100-meter board for the sharp hairpin. That is turn 9. Get your foot on the power as early as possible and straight line the miniature chicane through turn 10. Then keep to the right as you look to brake around the 100-meter board again for the final chicane at turn 11. And this will lead you out onto the short run onto the main straight and back down towards turn 1.
A fun racetrack is Circuit Zolder. It's tight, twisty. There's not a lot of room for mistakes on most of this racetrack, Jesse, as we prepare for our 60-minute event here. I think the topic of discussion is going to be those chicanes and specifically the curbing that drivers will have to navigate on the opening laps. That is going to be a pinch point, especially with those tight sausage curbs that you see there. Don't jump those, you'll find yourself airborne. As we roll down the grid here and get prepped for our race today, to note that on the front row, it's 2 Porsches that command the field. Luke Whitehead and Chris Harteveld in the Porsche 911 GT3R. A pro and a silver on the front row for this race, but Porsche taking 3 of those top 5 spots. Interesting to note that chassis right up in the front paired up with a Bentley and BMW running out the rest of your top 5.
Well, outside the top 5, you got to take no further look than Hendrickson in the 757 out in 9th place. Keep an eye on that car. One of the, if not the first Astons in the field. Quite curious what that car will do around Zolder. Michael's rounding out the top 10 of the 681. That McLaren, the very first McLaren in the field as well. It's always a curious question how that car is going to handle the curbs. As always, 94 Honda of Lou. Outside the top 10, Morera in 12th place, Sievert in 13th. I wouldn't have thought that car would have been that far down the grid, but that's how it goes. And Michael Kondexioglu rounding out the top 15 in the 56.
And perhaps a surprise that Kondexioglu is that far back in that number 56 Porsche. I should also note that the pole time was a 126.8, and the slowest cars that we had here in qualifying were just outside the 128 mark, so very tight at the top of the board. But looking back a little bit deeper in the field, the Lou Gobi in 20th, McLaren 720S GT3, and how about some other unlikely drivers down the order? 27th, Philippe Samard. 28th, Zach Patterson. Martineau in the number 38 BMW, he's 31st. Alvarado, 33rd. Josh Staffen. Ryan Meenan, 34th and 35th. Carl Whitmer, 37th. Those are a lot of names, Jesse, that we would typically see running at least in the top 12. So a lot of passing to do at Zolder for these drivers in a pretty short race by general consensus. The 60-minute race is more of a sprint than an endurance.
Oh, 100%. This race is going to absolutely fly by, and if you start somewhere near the back of this pack, it's going to be tough sledding. Killian Ryan Meenan, like you said, 35th place. You also got Timothy Flamger, who's going to line up in the 40th place position, and that is going to be detrimental, but you never know. You could get lucky on the opening laps around here. It's all going to be about positioning.
Yeah, I think track position at the start of the race is critical, and the qualifying is going to be probably one of the most competitive sessions we're going to see all throughout the season. If you have a field of 20 or 30 cars, that's one thing. Once you get over 40 and you're in the back half of that field, you have a lot of work to do, especially at a track like Zolder, where your passing opportunities exist, but the track is so short, you lap very quickly. Those opportunities go away very quickly as well if you're getting past. So some of the bigger tracks like Spa or Monza, those are the tracks that I wouldn't worry so much about starting deep in the field. A track like this, a bit more of a club circuit feel. It's a little tighter, a little twistier. That's where you want to have that all-important track position at the start of the race and be on defense more than offense. I think that's probably a position of strength, but for a lot of drivers, they're going to be busy out the windshield at the start of this one.
Oh, 100%. You don't want to really worry about what's in the rear view camera, do you? It's all about what's out in front of you. For one lucky driver, Whitehead there's going to be almost nothing out the windscreen of that 21 Porsche, as hopefully they will be able to keep Hartveld behind them for the overall number 1 position. What a qualifying for the 57. Just an excellent job to put that silver car so far up the field. Of course, a pit stop required today, and the little bit of strategy that you will have. But this race, an absolute sprint, one of the tighter tracks on the circuit, and it's absolutely going to feel that way. If you go off here, you don't go off in a small way. It's almost always in a big way.
Yeah, and you can also get yourself some cut course penalties pretty easily in those chicanes as well. So don't get too naughty and go off course to the inside. You'll get yourself into trouble there. You mentioned the silver driver Hartveld in second place in that number 57. So also give a shout out to the driver, the number 88, also participating in a Bentley Continental GT3. That's Gabriel Felipe, another silver driver who placed inside the top 10 qualifying. Very strong runs for those two drivers. But you mentioned that pit stop. That's going to bring in a strategy component about when you make your pit stop, and it's less about making undercuts or overcuts with tires. It's more about where you're positioning yourself in relation to traffic, right? You don't want to necessarily pit early if you're up front, because you're going to get released right into the midst of the field. So there's going to be a little bit of cooperation happening amongst the front drivers to maybe pit a little later, and the drivers in the back might feel like it's an advantage to pit earlier. But we'll see how that works out here once we get closer to that pit window.
Yeah, of course, you cannot pit immediately. It's anywhere between 15 and 45 minutes the pit window is open. Got to get the stop done at some point. I reckon you'll see almost the majority of the drivers come in near the midway point. There will be some of the drivers up near the front of this field that will almost certainly try to stay out to the last possible second, as is tradition in this style of racing. So many cars, so many storylines coming in. Mentioned that there's no points for anybody right now, but the second that we go green here, it will all be on for the rest of the season. Very nervous drivers right now, I would think, Kyle.
You're definitely nervous. This is the first round of the season. Even for the drivers that are returning, it is a high-skilled environment here. For the drivers that are new, this is when your nerves are going crazy, the butterflies in your stomach. For those that have been here a while, they're a bit more used to the pressure, especially if you're towards the front of the field. You're maybe a little bit more relaxed at this point, but once that green flag flies, all bets are off, and it's going to be 60 minutes here at Circuit Zolder. A lot of different makes and models, as we mentioned. The balance of performance in SRO competition keeps all these cars within a very specific performance window, but they all have their advantages and disadvantages in certain scenarios. I like the look of that Porsche up front right now, but certainly don't count out that brand new BMW M4 GT3. That car is extremely capable and will be a factor here, as well as the Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo. There's a handful of those through the field. Those cars sound fantastic, Jesse. I don't think it's a secret that it's one of my favorite sounding cars on the grid, that naturally aspirated V10. But the Bentley is making a return, also one starting up in third. Harry Spears behind the wheel. That's another formidable car in the right hands.
7 manufacturers in the top 11. Excellent BOP, if you ask me, and I think you're going to see a really nice balanced race. Of course, some cars are going to have a natural advantage on certain parts of the course, but of course there are longer straights for some of the others as well, and that should balance everything right out. And in fact, it was very, very close in qualifying, just about a tenth or so covering the top few. Oh, a penny for Luke Whitehead's thoughts right now.
Certainly, and I think right now you're getting quiet and getting ready to double up and start this race again. 60 minutes on the board. You're watching the first round of 5 in the sprint rounds for the 2022 Mobileye GT World Challenge America Esports Championship here in Assetto Corsa Competizione. We've been doing this for a couple of seasons now. The competition has been fierce all throughout. I'm Kyle Heyer, joined by Jesse Lee as the field works their way down at the far end of the track to double up and head through the final couple chicanes. And in a few moments, we'll be going green and racing for the first of 5 rounds this season. 2 Porsches on the front row, flat 6s in the rear of those cars getting ready to spin up to high RPM, the thundering Bentley in behind, and a handful of others, BMW, Mercedes-AMG, McLaren, Acura, and more represented here today. Field rolls through that final chicane, and on the Rebellion clock, 1 hour remains, but in just a moment, that clock will start ticking, and we'll start the 2022 esports season for the Mobileye GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. Here we go, doubled up 40 cars deep, 20 rows of GT3 cars in esports competition, and green flag flies. We're racing in the 2022 Mobileye GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. Whitehead crowds over the teammate on the run down to turn one. Is he going to be wide? He's got almost 2 tires in the gravel, just keeps it on course as they sweep through the first corner.
2x2 from third or fourth on back as everyone trying to fight over positions. It looks pretty tidy to me through the first couple of corners. The top 3 are very clearly through. Boothby has gained a position on the initial start of the race, getting by Harry Spears. The 285 Bentley is losing a little bit of ground, falling into the clutches of the cars behind. A move there, maybe, no, perhaps not, as they all try to get single file for the first chicane.
Oh, so far so good. A couple cars dropping tires off in the gravel, a few cutting the track. One of those is a red Aston Martin. Here's a battle for position. That looks to be is at the number 88 under fire, perhaps on the run down to the chicane, through the chicane for the first time. Appears the front dozen or so cars are through without issue. And looks like trouble for the number 22 of Fritz. That is Mike Fritz for pass onto grass, and might have been in the grass a little too early here. And now moving back up into 6th place, the number 54 Pro category car, Leonataki for Mercedes-AMG Esports Team HRT, and that awesome-looking Mercedes-AMG Evo, the wider mouth on that car. One of the adjustments, the changes in the Evo generation of the popular and successful Mercedes-AMG GT3 platform. Most of the changes in these Evo generation cars are electronics-related, Jesse, but some of those visual changes as well make them distinctive.
Yeah, it sure does, and I think it made that AMG particularly very aggressive looking, and it also has helped it aero balance-wise as well. We're going to talk about a leaner, meaner fighting machine. Look no further than that Mercedes AMG. It is a fantastic racing machine, and showing inside the top 6 right now. Well, what were the storylines that I was thinking about coming into today? What could George Boothby for Yas Heat do in the 75 Porsche? It's a Porsche 123 right now, and of course Boothby's up 1 spot. Oh no, the 38, the ST Racing Esports BMW has went around.
Yeah, it's Cameron Martineau in the ST Racing Esports car, as you mentioned. That brand new BMW M4 GT3 saw its first weekend of competition in SRO just last week at Sonoma Raceway. They had a very successful round, a little bit of beating and banging, a little deeper in the field. Elbows out here early, but this is what we talked about in the pre-races. In these early moments, the track is pretty tight for these large and somewhat heavy GT3 cars, so you're going to have your elbows out and you're going to be leaning on each other the first couple of minutes. Let's have a look here at the start of the race and see how some of these issues happened. There are 3 abreast on the run down to turn 1.
Well, I think you're going to see what happened to the NSXs. Oh, yes, contact between the 2 of them, and then further calamity. Can't break onto the grass. Collects 3 in a row right there. And that was very unfortunate for everybody involved.
Yeah, the 93 is Carl Whitmer, and the 22 car is Mike Fritz. So a couple of Acuras getting tangled in that first corner collision. There's a look at the number 88 Silver Class car. That's Gabriel Felipe in a Bentley Continental GT3. Well, 1 car a little wide, another Bentley. That was the car that started up in the front, I believe.
Let's see, that Gabriel Felipe in the 88, I think, just went off right there. That was a scary moment for one of the Bentleys, surely, but they gathered it back up with no additional harm or foul. Well, Jonathan Seville has found themselves in a precarious position. They've got Gonzalez and Rupert in front of them, but got Sievert right behind them as well. It's the age-old question, what do you do? Do you go for the pass or do you go for the defense? Got to do a little bit of both in this situation, I'd think.
I think you're looking out the windshield and the mirror at this moment, but not a lot of opportunity to get by in these tight chicanes, and Audi has a look behind. That is Tom Molly in the 731 just behind them. Had a look, thought better of it. Some damage on a few of these cars. See the BMW just in front. That's Philippe Samard. You see the nose of that car a little bit torn up, and Samard this season working with Mobileye and FFS Racing in duo, and already that car's got a little bit of body work that's kind of flapping in the wind here.
Runner-up last campaign in 2021. Not the start they were certainly looking for in this season, but a little bit of damage. You never know. It might not be the end-all be-all, especially at a race course like this. If it was at a high aero track, then maybe we'd talk about it. But here, I'm not too sure. As long as the steering's straight on that car, I'm sure it might actually be just as serviceable. Has their hands full, though, with Seville behind them.
Seville certainly ducking out of line into turn 1, and now into turn 2, sweeps back to the right. Or actually, that was the final corners here. Now down into turn 1, is going to pop out to the left, down the inside, and looks like he'll grab the position away. Can he clear the 42? Here comes a 36 car now. Noller has a look to the inside, 3 abreast as Molly goes down the inside. He'll grab 2 for 1. What a move there by Molly in the green Audi.
Molly absolutely not taking no for an answer right there. Saw the opportunity, got a 2 for 1. That's a BOGO, and that's an excellent drive out of the corner, and that made Tom Molly look absolutely genius there.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I think Simard is kind of trying to stop the bleeding here at this point. That damage certainly is affecting the performance of that car in those faster areas, those longer straightaways. The air is getting up underneath that hood and slowing his car down. Could be fighting some suspension damage as well, but now he's got Alvarado in one of those Acura NSX GT3s right behind, as well as Roberto in the number 44. That's a Pro Class car, Felipe Roberto for Williams Esports. There's a couple of those Williams Esports cars out there, and right now Roberto in the 44 sits in 30th place.
Yeah, I worry that Simard's issues are a little bit more than cosmetic, a little bit worse than I feared. Something definitely amiss on that car, a little bit of contact between the 420 and the 42. As the Acura trying to get through, a little bit more fender rubbing there. As the BMW seems to have decent grunt and might have the inside here. Maybe a little bit more contact getting into the final chicane, hopping over the curb. And again, trying to stop the bleeding, but to no avail here.
Yeah, and every time you get on those sausage curbs at those apexes, they will launch the car skyward. These cars have those aerodynamic splitters on the front, on the other side of the front bumper, and if you drag those across those curbs, it will act like a ramp and shoot the car into the air, and that's what's going to happen to the 42 if he continues to do that. But he's got a bit of a pressure building behind him. He's the cork in the bottle at the moment as Roberto, Fritz, and more join the fray, including looks like that is also an Aston Martin of Dornell in the number 68, a silver class car this season. Renato Dornell, we've seen him before this year with Race Anywhere SimSport.
Dornell now trying to be the one that gets the positions away from Simard. And as we flash back to the front of the field here, got Gabriel Felipe, the 88, continuing to try and overtake in that Bentley, what is now a quad group of Bentleys I've just noticed, so 4 in a row now.
Yeah, they've really kind of started to gang up on the drivers in front of them. There's 3 Porsches leading the field and a BMW, Mercedes, and then 4 Bentleys before an Acura rounds out in the top 10. So that car and these drivers are certainly geared up to Circuit Zolder at the moment, as we are only about 8 minutes into this race and already starting to see some stringing out at the front of the field. Luke Whitehead leads by 1.4. Then it's Hartveld behind in the silver class number 57. And then Boothby in the 75 rides about a half a second beyond that. Here is a look at, that's the number 77 of Josh McKean. This is back at lap number 2 in his Delta Sport car. On the outside is a Porsche, and they're going to make contact, and wow, it's going to send the Porsche for a ride. That's the 898 car of Felix Vince Hacker, and that was big contact there with the tire barrier.
I don't know how many times in motor racing we've seen that move not come off and that exact same thing happen. It's always a shock when it does, though. And for that Porsche, that's going to be race-altering damage, I think I'm safe in saying.
Yeah, the tire bundles are softer than the concrete, but I still don't recommend you go test them out here at Circuit Zolder. There's a lot of areas where you can get off track at pretty high velocity. That's one of them, and I think those were just 2 cars that got their elbows kind of hooked together and they couldn't get apart here. Here's a Lou Gobi in the number 49. She's right now running in 18th place, right ahead of Negrini in the number 5 in a group of silver class cars inside the top 20, and she's with Grip Hacks Engineering this season. We've seen a Lou before, and she's certainly very capable and is continuing to move forward here in the early going.
I've known Alou for a little while, but I had no idea that she raced in VR like that, but here we have it, and doing really well. 18th place is one of the cars that I was interested in seeing this season, and going very well. You know, for some it's not been the ideal start, but for Gobi at least, it's all going well.
Yeah, I love sim racing just because of the different setups you can have, right? Some drivers prefer monitors, some drivers prefer this virtual reality as sort of a better immersion into the simulator. And when you do this, this gives you a great perspective on the space around you, especially when you're navigating a tight and narrow track like this and getting through traffic. That can be a distinct advantage. For longer races, that can get tiring to have that thing on your head all day, but some people have figured out how to make it work for them, and Alou certainly making it work for her at the moment. Here's George Boothby running in third at the moment in the number 75 car, and chasing second place, Chris Harteveld, and closing it looks only 3/10 back.
Well, we watched Boothby take that one position on the start quite easily and has attempted to gain ground right on the back of second place. What happens here down into the hairpin? A little bit of rubbing.
Ooh, there was a big stack up there. The 49 car involved in that. And yeah, that was just one of those accordion effects. Everybody's sort of trying to behave and stay in line, and one car slows down a little bit more, and the others behind can't see, and bam, 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 you're going to have a crash there. So that was, I think the 77 kind of got the short end of the stick, being the one at the front of that, sort of got the biggest hit to the rear.
Absolute accordion effect. It can happen anywhere. It's huge in that hairpin. It can happen on the chicanes as well, but that's what happens. You get so many cars that are racing so close to each other, that are so similar on pace, and there's nothing you can do. I know that looked a bit weird to some, but I assure you there's nothing strange about that. That is the product of very close racing. This track will certainly provide, and it's providing here for the second place spot. Boothby hunting second place right now, just looking for a mistake. A little bit of going back to school for George, I feel, trying to figure out where he's better than the second place car. He's caught him. Like they say in racing, Kyle, catching's one thing, passing quite another.
It certainly is. Here is a look at Kike Oliveira in the Oak Racing Team Dynasty BMW M4 GT3. Right behind him is the 103 car of Luke Southall in a Bentley Continental GT3 at the moment. This is a battle for 16th place, Luke Gobi just behind. And this group, as you mentioned, that accordion effect, well, they're coming back together and fighting as they close in on Oliveira for 15th place. That's the number 72 Ferrari just up the road, perhaps. So this is going to get really interesting as these cars chase the back half of the pro field. This could get elbows out, as we mentioned, and as you get deeper into the race, you're going to get braver and more confident. Your tires and brakes are up to temperature. So I think Gobi, again, is one of the drivers on a mission, and I think she's about to make short work of at least the Bentley right in front of her.
What a great race it would be for Gobi if they could get by these cars, get on the podium. That's basically what we're fighting for here in this pack. Oliveira holding on to that spot for the time being. Of course, Oliveira has other things in their mind. They want to get by the 72 and get up the road and get away from the rest of the silver drivers. But Southall will not allow that to happen, surely, as they're all fighting over that last podium spot. Silver, and nearly everybody follow the leader out of turn one, and nearly all of them hit the dirt there.
Anthony Oliveira went a little bit wide, grabbed the gravel. Here's a look at the number 92 car of Zach Patterson. Ooh. A little bit of a bad bounce off of the curbing there and went for a slide into the grass. So it has not been a great day for the HPD Ask Pro America cars. Those Acuras have been caught up in a couple incidents so far. Not all of their own doing. Some of them kind of got in another mess, but they would certainly like things to turn around at this stage in the race. Look at this, though, for 15th place. Oliveira versus Oliveira, 72 versus 32, Ferrari versus BMW.
It's going to be a nice move down to the inside. Can you make it stick? Will there be room, boys? You got to pay attention. And running off is the 72 Ferrari of Oliveira, trying to give enough room and eventually had to hit the old eject button. And that will not result in a position gain for the 32. Now defensive drive from the 32. Southall behind, trying to make that move around the outside. It's going to open up the inside. A little bit of a touch there, and that's going to allow the 5 of Negrini through.
Yeah, as soon as Oliveira went defensive, that just all popped off there. Negrini saw the door open and went for it and shuffled out the Bentley as Southall pushed him out of the way. And then Luke Gobi took advantage of that as well. And the red Bentley is falling down the order. And this feels very much like a NASCAR race at Martinsville, where you kind of uproot somebody out of the groove and they're going to lose 4 or 5, maybe 6 spots because of how aggressive everybody is. We've mentioned at several points how close this is. And then we made it. This is not separated by as much as you'd think. As soon as you get pushed out of the way, the 7 or 8 people that have been ganging up on you behind are going to go by, and you're going to have to fight back or wait for someone else to make a mistake.
No, it's an absolute good point. You cannot, for anything, you cannot get out of line. If you are going to get out of line and try to make a pass, you better be sure, at least 98% sure, that that pass is going to come off, because if it doesn't, there's going to be a train of cars like this exact scenario who are all going to have a shot at you. And even if they're not in the advantageous position, a lot of times, simply because you're inconvenienced because of the line you took, they're going to get by. And it basically, you just go to the back of the train.
Yeah, Killian Ryan Meenan for FFS Racing started in 35th. Here he is now looking for 25th on Sivert in the number 13. Now that was a car that started up towards the front, if I recall correctly, and had some issues that pushed him back into the field just a little bit, and this is a battle for 25th place, and Ryan Meanan's on an upward climb, but 9 positions in 15 minutes. You're going to need a little bit more than that to get into the points here.
Certainly will, but if anyone can do it, I reckon it would be Killian Ryan Meanan, trying to get some of those spots back that they gave up in the qualifying stage. Gregor Schill here in the top 5, looking for a little bit more. Now has George Boothby in front of him. Boothby, who was trying to get by Hartfeld, now has a new challenger behind. Schill, that car looking very fast.
Yeah, Schill running in that number 89 car. That is a Pro Class car running with BMW Team BS and Turner Motorsport. You see the yellow and blue, that classic Turner livery on the left of the car. That team also returned to SRO competition last week at Sonoma in the real world and battled for the wins there as well. So that was a lot of fun to watch. But you see Schill in this battle for third, and this is a car that we didn't talk about a lot at the beginning of the race, was just sort of quietly lurking, and now is fighting for a podium spot. So Schill getting faster as we get deeper into this race. You see the pit window is now open. Drivers can elect to make their mandatory pit stop now, but I think a lot of the drivers at the front are going to wait until much later in the race to make that move.
100%. If you've been inconvenienced in this race, maybe you think about it. If you're deep into traffic, maybe you're at the end of a 3 to 5 car long train like we were talking about, maybe you think about it, but the majority is going to at least wait to the halfway point. I don't think we're going to get many tire changes in today. I just don't think the weather will warrant it, nor will the tire deg on these Pirellis. I think they're going to do more than hold up well today. Just going back to that BMW, we were just saying, I am a huge Bill Auberlen fan. To see that Turner BMW livery on that car does my heart well.
Yeah, and having a guy like Bill Auberlen at SRO America race weekends is always a treat. And you should have seen the entry list there last weekend for Fanatec GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS, of extremely stout entry list in Pirelli GT4 America as well. There was lots of drivers that are some of the cream of the crop of North American sports car and GT racing. That was a blast. I was glad to be there with DJ Clark, who will be joining us in the booth for a couple rounds later in the season. But a successful start to the 2022 season as we look forward to the rest of the SRO America schedule this year, including a trip to the new Ozarks International Raceway. Here's Gonzalez on the attack in 21st place, moving up to 20th as we got a battle down into that chicane. One of the Acuras going down a few spots as well, and bouncing over those curbs, and that's something you got to be conscious of, Jesse. If you get damage on those, it's going to be a bad day. Damage that suspension, that's hard to fix.
No, absolutely it is. It's a lot of time in pit lane to do some major work like that. And of course, all you got to do is just run over it excessively hard, which a lot of times, you know, in real racing, what do they tell you? Don't hit the curbs. We're not trying to damage the tires, which is also a possibility. Lesser known here than some other tracks. There's a lot of stuff as a driver you're having to do sort of lap by lap. Don't hit this curb, hit this curb. Where can I cut? Where can I not cut? You got to do that over and over again. And also, by the way, there's about 43 other cars trying to take that spot away from you.
All right, what the drivers want to do versus what the teams want you to do, those are totally different things sometimes, especially when you're fresh out of the pits, you're on low tire pressures. That sidewall is a little bit soft. You don't necessarily want to be slamming the tire against the pavement. You could kind of blow it out that way or cut it on debris if you're running off track too much. But for the most part, here in ACC, you can be pretty aggressive with the racetrack boundaries and to the point where you can get yourself into trouble. Looks like Vinny Oliveira in the number 72 Ferrari has made his mandatory pit stop, so he was going to come hit pit lane. Here is some incidents involving cars 49, 103, 93, and 420. Stop and go to the number stop and go for 30 seconds to car number 93 for causing that collision. That was Carl Whitmer that will have that penalty. Warning to car 36 for another contact. That vehicle, of course, is the silver class car, Jack Knoller, in a McLaren 720S GT3 for Williams Esports Academy. So Stewart's already active on dishing out some penalties from some early contact, Jesse. But as we dig deeper into this race, this is the time where you put your head down and just try to get time and get positions as cleanly and quickly as possible.
Yeah, it sure is. And of course, that additional warning to car 92 as well. And, well, that's the way the race has gone. I think that you're going to get little argument with that penalty. I think we saw what happened, and I felt like that was a warranted penalty for that contact. But onwards and upwards, of course. You can't do nothing about it now. You just have to continue on, try to get as many spots back as you possibly can, and try to get back in the points. Here's Harry Spears, by the way. They race anywhere SimSport 285 Bentley. And this is one of the drivers I was paying attention to very closely at the start of this race. They're up to P7, and more importantly, they have the fastest lap of the race right now.
Yeah, that's a critical moment to have the quickest lap, because now we're past the what I would call the hot lap stage, where you're just going to go out and set really quick laps in the early stages of the race. But as the fuel burns off and the drivers get focused in, to run a fast lap in the middle of the run is extremely powerful. So I think that Harry Spears is in a pretty good spot. The Bentley certainly has pace this week here at Circuit Zolder. He's running third of that 4-car group at the moment, but reeling in Felipe in front of him. Then he's got Rodriguez up in 5th. That would put him inside the top 5 within striking distance of a podium. So that Race Anywhere car in the right direction at the moment with the speed that he's got. Racing incident between the cars 15, 33, and 92 for that lap 1 contact. So that one will get passed along with no penalty. Here's Killian Ryan Meenan in the number 123 Aston under fire from Alvarado in the 420. Actually, that was Bentley, rather, and it looks like that pass had just been done. So Ryan Meenan will take the position from Gonzalez in the number 1 Bentley, and will move himself up into 18th place. So as pit stops are happening, Jesse, Killian Ryan Meenan continues that climb, that pink Aston moving up.
Sure is, and absolutely needs to. Of course, some of the cars in front of Killian Ryan Meenan and the FFS Racing Aston have pitted, but even still, that was progress you could see visually with the pass taking place. So I think at this point, Ryan Meenan stands a good chance to get in the points if they can continue this sustained success.
Yeah, that was a concern of mine when we saw the qualifying order, how far down he was, starting 35th. That was not going to be a great day if he couldn't move forward, but looks like they've put the worst of the day behind him and are now moving in the right direction. That's all you can ask. If you can start 35th and have a good day, then when you start 5th, you're going to have a really good day, and that's critical as we move into the 2nd through 5th rounds of this championship. If this is your worst qualifying day of the season, there's only up to go from here. Here's the number 77 car. This is a silver class car running in 37th spot right now. That is down the order just a little bit. McKean in that machine at the moment. Josh McKean for Delta Sport. This is a car that we saw involved in a contact earlier today with the 898 car. This was ruled as a racing incident from that contact on lap number 2. McKean running 37. Still needs to make his pit stop, and notably, you look around him, a lot of green. Now that green is a signifier of cars that have already completed their pit stop. The yellow and the 1 signifies that they still have 1 required stop to go.
It's always a underwhelming experience whenever you're racing cars that have already completed their pit stop, knowing that you still have to. I always hated that feeling as a driver myself, Kyle, because that means that you're not in a position that you should probably be in. And of course, with the racing incident for the contact, that kind of shows you what has happened to them in the early part of the race. One thing I will say, seeing these cars hop these curbs, Kyle, is there's not been a whole bunch of drama over the curbs. I expected the opening laps to be a bit more chaotic than they were, and I expected a lot more extravagant driving, I would say, over the curbs. I've just not seen that. Everybody here has been very nice and controlled and had some very fantastic racing down into these chicanes. I wouldn't have actually expected everyone to be doing this well, but then again, these are the best of the best.
Oh, of course, and you don't want to draw yourself a penalty, especially when you're on your own, right? You control what you can control in a race like this. If you're getting yourself a penalty by not staying within track limits, that's a totally avoidable thing that you could have not done. Now, if you're racing side by side and you get shuffled off or you get spun out, that's a result of racing that happens. But when you get yourself out of track bounds and you get yourself a penalty, that's all on you. So I think drivers at this level have sort of figured out, as we see that's Carl Whitmer returning to the racetrack. We figured out that giving yourself penalties is not the way forward, and the only penalties you ever want to get are the ones that you had when it got ruled a little bit wrong and you're up in the mix battling with somebody. That's the kind of penalty that you can move on from. The ones that are self-inflicted sometimes hurt the worst. And speaking of that, Carl Whitmer, speaking of self-inflicted penalties, had a stop and go for 30 seconds because of that contact, came down into pit lane, sped in the pits, got another stop and go for 30. That's what he just returned to the pit lane from. That's the kind of thing that you can't do if you want to finish up inside the top 10 and get points here in this championship. You can't have self-inflicted penalties.
You couldn't be more right, but more often than not, we see stuff like that. It's simply a story of either not getting down to speed in time or being a little bit frustrated, a little bit distracted, as you would be in that case, getting flustered. All that does is make your day go from bad to worse, and unfortunately for Whitmer, it's turned this race into a nightmare for them. But look at this, Gregor Schill working through some traffic here, still on the tail of George Boothby, who, by the way, fell off the back of Hartveld and never gained that time back. I don't know if that's a little bit of mirror driving on Boothby's part, or maybe Schill is just absolutely coming with a head of steam, and Boothby's car has fallen off just a little bit here. I'm not sure which one it is, but one thing's for sure, that BS Turner Motorsports car is coming.
Yeah, he is coming, and I think it's a little bit of both, right? I think Boothby could have charged a little hard at the beginning. I think Schill was kind of waiting for things to warm up and for the track to clear before he went on the attack. But at the moment, this is going to be a pretty stout battle for third place. With that pit window open, this is a pretty critical moment. If Boothby can stay in front of Schill for a while, he's going to be holding Schill up. And I think at the moment, the 89 is the faster car. So if Schill can just keep the 89 behind him, he's going to cost him time that he can't have later. So critical moment here for the number 75 Porsche to keep that yellow and white car in the mirrors for as long as possible. And we might see Boothby get a little bit defensive on the run down of these chicanes.
Schill looks absolutely cool as a cucumber, now looking a little bit stressed coming down to the chicane. Maybe an opportunity presented itself for a little bit of a peak, but nothing big enough for the BMW to go down the inside through, so everything results back to the way it was. Boothby might be driving very defensively here, trying to do exactly what you said, Kyle. All Boothby actually has to do is keep that BMW behind them, and then it doesn't matter. Boothby could secure a podium finish in his debut today if he keeps that 89 behind him. And of course, Schill knows that, and Schill is looking for every single opportunity to slip up beside and get by the 75.
And we're talking about differences between the pace of, hundredths of a second. So if Schill stays on Boothby, as long as Boothby doesn't make any clear and obvious mistakes, it's still going to be a challenge to get by that 75. It's not going to come easy. The second that Boothby slips up or makes a mistake, that's when Schill's going to pounce. But if Boothby stays on the racing line and continues to drive like he's doing, it's going to keep Schill behind him for a little bit longer as we approach the halfway point of this race. But right now, that Porsche doing everything he needs to do to keep the number 89 BMW behind him. We should also keep an eye also as Felipe in the 88 is not too far behind these two. You see the weaving there from Schill. That's a hello to Boothby that I am here, and maybe a distraction tactic in the mirrors.
Yeah, depending on how many mirrors Boothby has, trying to fill them up. A little bit of a mistake coming through the chicane there has allowed Schill down the inside. Maybe a little bit of fender rub in there. He's going to go too wide through here. Boothby's not going to give it up lightly, and it's going to just about pull back in front by converting the inside through the first part of that chicane. Excellent driving. George Boothby continues to hold on to third.
That was phenomenal. He just did everything he needed to do. Got under attack there from that slip up in the chicane, and then he just outdrove Schill into the next chicane. Just stood on the Porsche on the nose. Absolutely did a fantastic job defending there from the 89 and hugged the inside. Didn't rough him up, didn't push him off. Just outbraked and moved past him in the next corner. That was a great, great defense. See now from the front of the 89, the rear of the 75. This battle is far from over, though. It's just getting started.
No, it absolutely is. Give credit to Schill, by the way, as well. Did everything right. Didn't rough up the 75. Gave them just enough room down the inside to make that work. And they got through there completely fine. And that's what pro racing drivers look like here in the Esports series. And that's what you expect to see. Just immense respect between the two of them, but also excellent driving, pinpoint precision.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to sit in a driver's meeting at Sonoma last week where the competition directors and stewards basically, the ruling came down to this. It said if you're side by side with somebody, you're giving them space. I don't care if it's a fender, if it's a door, if it's a dive plane. If you're side by side in any way, I want there to be space given on the racetrack, and that's what was done right there. Now, we can't guarantee that's what's going to happen for the rest of the day between these two, but that was a pretty good foreshadow, I hope, to the rest of this battle as these two continue to fight for third place overall. This is a great scrap between Porsche and BMW at the moment. Porsche in that famous 911 GT3R that's seen so many variants and so much success over the years, and that brand new BMW M4 GT3 that is just reaching North American competition in 2022 with that, of course, that famous Turner Motorsports livery here on half the car. In the real world, that Turner car certainly looked great at Sonoma last week.
Well, we saw on the screen just a moment ago a huge race-changing penalty for Killian Ryan Meenan, deemed drive-through for causing a incident. Don't know if we saw that from Ryan Meenan, the incident that they caused, but the stewards definitely did, awarded a drive-through penalty for that, and that will all but end their day for points here. I don't think they'll have an opportunity. They still have to make their pit stop, and that would mean they're going to have to come down twice, and due to that, it is all but going to eliminate their opportunity for a points-paying finish today.
Yeah, that's a shame, right? This stage in the championship is so fresh. We haven't even gotten a race under the books yet, so to put yourself down in the running this early in the season is certainly not where that team wanted to be, but he will have to come serve a drive-through. The stewards are busy right now, I can tell you that. Behind the scenes, a lot of chatter happening, a lot of work going on to make all this possible. Looks like Harry Spears in the number 285 has made his pit stop. Here's a look at the number 124. This is Igor Rodriguez in fifth at the moment in that Bentley. And Igor right now, this season competing with Williams Esports. See that famous Williams white and blue Esports livery they've had in a while. Shill Blast on the side now, right behind the 89. So as I mentioned, Boothby and Shill, that's dragged in this Bentley. And now it's Shill, hunted after being the hunter for a handful of laps.
I love the way that car looks. And look at this. I think this is an absolute brilliant move by Rodriguez. The Williams Esports Shill Blast car has decided to come down pit lane. I think that is excellent strategy. Not only is it near the middle of the race, they knew that there were two cars in front of them, passing them on the track's difficult. Come in early, get the undercut in, and hopefully get out in front of them after they pit. I love that strategy.
That was a great call there. I agree with you on that. You know you're going to get held up, so hit pit lane before it holds you up. Right now, drive through to Luke Gobi for causing a collision. That was that contact we saw down at, I think that was at turn number 8 that contact was. So Lou will have to hit pit lane and do a drive-through penalty. We just got a look a moment ago at Michael Kondaxioglu, who started 15th up into the top 10 at this stage in the race as we watch a battle for position here. Harry Spears in the 285 and looks like getting by one of the Astons on the front straightaway there.
Very good pass, a very well-timed pass as well.
Meant to say that was actually Hendrickson, rather, looking at the wrong part of the timing screen. So Hendrickson in the 757, getting by Dornell in the 68. So apologies for that. Harry Spears still has that best lap lit up in purple at the moment, right now in 14th place.
Still a good pass by Hendrickson to get that move done. And, of course, more cars pitting up to P16 at the moment due to all of that. And I think you'll start to see a few more cars every single lap coming in, and in another 5 minutes or so, there should be a mad dash for the majority of the top 10. If I'm Whitehead, if I'm the leader of this race in the 21 Porsche, there's no reason for me to come down pit lane. Look at this, down the front straightaway. Boothby going all the way to the outside wall, trying to keep Shill behind him, and just about has it completed. Going wide there on the exit to maximize the corner. Well done by Boothby in full defensive mode now.
Elevator move top to bottom there for Boothby on the defense, to the inside, to the outside, to the apex. Great job there by the 75, but Boothby really didn't want the car behind to make that pit stop. We got some dramas back here. Luke Southall in the red Bentley having a bit of a rub there with, looked like, was that another Bentley behind him perhaps, or an Aston. A little bit of rubs there, but moving back into the third place battle, Boothby did not want that Bentley to pit, that 124 car. He needed that car to attack Shill in the moment, but because he hit pit lane, now Shill is free and clear to attack Boothby, and now this is going to get spicy again here in the next few minutes.
5 in the 72 had contact. That was deemed a racing incident. No foul there. Race on, says race control, and race on is what they're doing here for P3. Boothby has had to do everything they could. That was a desperation move down to the outside to keep Shill by them that lap. My question is, will we see it here?
Holy cow.
Goodness. Now that is something that you don't often see. Shill caught off guard. I don't know if they meant to come down pit lane, Kyle.
Holy cow, I can't believe what just happened. The 89 swept to the inside and then darted across the nose of the 75 to hit pit lane. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but either way, genius or crazy, I can't decide.
I'm pretty sure that had woken up George Boothby, who was not expecting. I mean, George Boothby was already awake, obviously defending, but that is something I have never seen that here in GT racing.
No,
yeah,
wow. I've seen similar moves, but not that late and not in that sharp of a corner. That's just unbelievable. And in hindsight, the 89, that might have been a good call to undercut and try to get that position as the ST Racing car hits pit lane. Martineau, who we saw turned around a little earlier, he's going to be on pit lane now, pitting from 17th place, and they'll work the last 25 minutes of this event from this position. So into pit lane for their mandatory stop as we continue to navigate here the first of 5 rounds of the 2022 Mobileye GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. Here's a look down to the inside and just bam, back to the right. I can't believe he made that stick. Did he make the entrance though?
Yeah, I think he did, Kyle, but I don't know if the stewards are going to appreciate that.
Oh, certainly not. I don't think anybody appreciated that, but it was
George
cool.
definitely didn't appreciate that, yeah.
Oh, boy. Well, that was something.
See
Certainly
something new every day.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly the most creative way I've ever seen to enter pit lane, but I think next upside down and backwards might be the only way you can up that ante at that point. Moving back in the battle here is Cardin Liu in the number 94. This has been a tough day for the HPD SRO America cars. Cardin up to 17th, but only has positions to gain here. Note the next 3 cars on the timing above him still need to pit with that yellow number 1, and it looks like he's just going to get by one of them there. So that will move Cardin Liu up to 16th place. Now Sam Michaels and Renato Dornell next on the chopping block. Here's another look. This is on board from the 75, and have a look at this. Wow.
Oh, man. There is no angle that does not look dramatic. That caught everyone off guard. My question remains, did Schill mean to do that? And also, why did they mean to do that if they did?
Well, there's a couple ways to look at that. I mean, it looked sort of intentional, but if he didn't mean to, he just might have just missed his braking point and was too deep into the ABS. And that's the one great thing about ABS is that you can still make that turn with the brakes that otherwise they'd be locked up. So that anti-lock braking system kind of pulses the brake pedal and allows you to make directional adjustment. But if he just missed the brake pedal, got in the brakes too deep, and then saw that he had to dive to the inside, or maybe he thought he was going to follow the 75. Maybe there was just a miscommunication there, and that never happened. So either way, that could have been an avoidance maneuver, and that's probably what he's going to try to plead to the stewards as we're hearing it's going to be reviewed post-race.
Yeah, I think that's the only thing you can do with something like that. There was no contact there, of course, but that was a very scary moment, and I think that is the right call. The stewards have noted that. We'll take a look at that after the race today and try to make sense of it. Certainly, they'll do a better job than we have done here in the booth, because that was an absolute first. I've seen a lot of stuff in racing, but that was an extra chicane, I think is what I'm going to refer to that. Moving on, Cardin Liu trying to gain a spot here inside the top 15, and this man, Harry Spears, in the 285, still the fastest lap. Like you said, had the fastest lap.
Sorry, Jesse, we just heard that he had a big impact with the wall at the first chicane, so he was having trouble in this last lap. So that's big news for a driver that was one of the quickest. Here's a look at it.
All by themselves.
Big jump on the... Oh, that's nasty. That is nasty. Big jump on the curb. They kind of bounced it, landed funky, and it just steered straight into the fence. That is pretty significant contact there, Jesse. I'd be surprised if he would get away without a whole lot of damage.
No, that's a lot of damage on the Race Anywhere SimSport car. That is certainly going to need some either repairs, or maybe at this point, since you've already pitted, you gut it out. But I wonder just how much of damage that is. I would say, by my guesstimation, severely significant.
Yeah, it's certainly not going to be a race-winning car at this stage of the race, and unfortunately, I'm not sure there's a lot you can do about it at this point. Moving back, here's a 32 car of Oliveira in 23rd, chasing Noller. That's that yellow and blue McLaren just ahead into the chicanes here. And this is one of those tracks that I would think the slightly larger, maybe softer suspension cars would give you an advantage, and those would be the cars like the Bentleys, but as we saw there, even the Bentley can get launched too far skyward and have trouble landing. He's going to hit pit lane here. He's already made a pit stop, but it looks like he's going to come back down pit lane and get some damage repair.
I would say that's the smart, sensible thing to do for Harry Spears here. All you're going to do is hemorrhage time if you stay out there on the course with that much damage, and also probably feeling something in the steering, feeling something in the car that they don't like, don't want to hang on to it for 20 minutes. So they're going to come in and fix it, and it might be as little as 20, 30 seconds depending on exactly what is damaged on that Bentley. So in the end game, it might actually be more advantageous to do what they're doing, and especially for driver comfort, that is the smart move.
Well, Gregor Schill has got work to do. He's got a couple cars to pass. He's running 9th right now. Interesting to note, though, that Boothby still has not made his pit stop. So now that Schill is in traffic, this could impact his ability to get by the 75 with that undercut in pit lane. So this is a pretty critical moment. If he gets held up at all by the car in front of him, that's the 88 Bentley. That's the car that started up on the up in the top 5. If Schill gets stuck back here, this is going to be impacting his ability to get by that 75 once the top 6 cars pit. Notably, how about Molly in the Audi in 6th place? That's a really good climb. He started real deep in the field.
Unfortunately, we saw that Noller there in the 36 McLaren has a 5-second penalty for an incident earlier in the race. Chris Sievert here inside the top 20, already done their pit stop, racing the Geary for 18th, and I suspect that'll be somewhere closer to the top 15 after everyone pits.
Yeah, and again, a few spots left to get rid of. There's about 4 minutes remaining here in this pit window, so the drivers that have yet to pit will need to be on pit lane by the time that clock expires, right above the Rebellion logo in the middle top of your screen. Here's a dart to pit lane. No, that's the 3 car of Sievert. It looked like he wanted to go to pit lane after sliding there, but managed to gather it back up, and he will continue. Bit of a tight moment there on the final couple corners of this racetrack. Under 20 minutes to go, less than a third of this race remaining, and here comes the race leader, Luke Whitehead, down pit lane. He has been rock solid out front. Don't mess it up now, Jesse.
No, absolutely not. You got to come in clean, even if that means coming in 1 kph or 1 mile per hour under what your limiter is on, just to make sure you get down under it, get the limiter on, and then get back up to speed. Yes, you may lose a fraction of a second, but when you have 3+ seconds of lead, you cannot afford to make a mistake. You got to get on the jacks, and that looked like a fantastic stop for Luke Whitehead as planned. Yeah,
that was a really good in and out, and we'll get back by Harteveld in the number 57, as Harteveld will roll out as well. Now, the Harteveld running for GTWR R8G Academy, and Luke Whitehead in the number 21, also running for the same team. So both of those cars in different categories, but running up front. I would say it's a strong start for both of those teammates, provided they can finish out what they started.
No, absolutely. I mean, this is a picture-perfect day for a day that, for some, has gone completely off the rails and given up the opportunity at points for those two teammates. It has been an absolute dream. If they can finish this off in the final 17 and a half, it'll be a day that they remember for a very long time, I can assure you that.
And here's Michael Kondaxioglu in that number 56 for FFS Racing, chasing down Cardin Liu. This is a battle for position for 11th on the grid. And Kondaxioglu, again, he started pretty deep here in the field, 15th place. So it's been sort of a slow slog up through the order. He's still got a few more positions to gain once those pit stops happen. But Kondaxioglu in the past was always in the top 5. That just goes to show you how competitive this series is now, that Kondaxioglu is just sitting outside the top 10. Also of note, drivers like Josh Staffen, who in the first season of competition of the Mobileye GT World Challenge America Esports Championship was essentially unbeatable, and now it's a very different story at this stage in the championship.
Well, I feel like we talk about at the end of every season the promise of a new season, and just, you know, what exactly you're going to get the next season is always better than the season before. Everyone's always improving. There's always more talent. Esports racing, there is so much talent in all the different regions, and America absolutely no different. And that's what you get. Kondaxioglu, who, again, I wouldn't say ran away with the championship, but definitely was the better driver for the entire season, I would say, on the whole.
I would say that that's pretty accurate here. We should also mention, as the pit window comes to a close and the last couple drivers are planning on hitting pit lane in the next minute or so, look at where Gregor Schill is in that number 89. He's down a couple positions from where he was. Remember, he came in to pit lane running in 4th, battling for 3rd with the number 75. Now, he's going to gain a position or two here with all this exchanging, but I think he's going to lose overall. He's got the 88 in front of him, the 124 in front of him. Those were all cars that were behind him previously. Here comes race leader, previously 3rd place runner, George Boothby. He will hit pit lane, and this will basically cycle out to be the last couple drivers on pit lane. So where is that 89 going to end up? I'm going to bet it's pretty far in tow of the 75.
Yeah, probably that. George Boothby continuing to do exactly what I've known Boothby to do. Pit as absolutely late as possible into a run, had 30 seconds. Keep that in mind, folks at home. If he would have had an accident, been held up a little bit on his in-lap there, that could have meant he was outside the pit window. It's a gamble you run, and it's a gamble that Boothby normally wins, like he has done. Luke Whitehead, GCWR 21, reassumes the lead here as expected.
And here comes Boothby out of pit lane. Should also note that Ataki, who we were just looking at, the number 54 Mercedes AMG drive-through penalty for speeding in pit lane. That is a little bit of a silver lining, though, because typically you'd get a stop and go for 30 if you speed in pit lane. So that was a little lighter penalty than I would have expected for that violation. So that was a little bit of a lucky break there. But with Whitehead, Harteveld, and Boothby back out front, we resume the order that we had roughly before the pit stop. But Schill down 2 positions in 89 for Turner Motorsport. Perhaps a bit of a disappointing pit sequence, and they'll be looking at that as a mistake heading into round number 2. How can we pit more effectively, more efficiently, and gain time rather than lose it in that pit lane sequence?
Well, I think Schill was trying to do the undercut, obviously, and saw the group of cars in front, thought that they were going to hold each other up. That turns out to not be the case. I've seen this trend ever since the end of 2021. Pitting late as possible, regardless of where you are, seems to be the favorite strat among a lot of the drivers. I think you saw that here today, and, well, it's worked. For everyone that pitted very late into the window, it seems to have worked. Anybody who has pitted very early, it hasn't worked nearly as well. Can't honestly tell you why that is, but it always seems to be the rule these days. Pit as late as possible, but I still don't hate that move by Schill. Thought that that was the right move. It could have paid off, just not this time.
Yeah, I think it happened more circumstantially what happened when he left the pits versus when he entered. And I think generally, if waiting to the end of the sequence is usually a good thing. Sometimes it's not if you have a lot of tire fall off, but these Pirelli tires are so good that they don't really lose a lot of pace. In fact, you can actually gain pace throughout the run. What you'll lose in a longer run on the Pirellis is not necessarily pace. You're going to lose the feel of the car. So you don't need to hit pit lane early. Now, if we're running the endurance races later this season, you might see a little bit of a different strategy there. But in these sprint rounds, I think pitting later is better just to stay out of traffic. And that, I think, is what caused the 89 to get buried. And we'll lose 2 positions on that sequence. But Boothby is not out of the clear yet. He's got positions to fight. Still holding off 3rd place from Rodriguez and the number 124 for Williams Esports. This is going to get spicy again. Porsche versus Bentley this time.
It sure is. George Boothby's going to be wondering, what do I have to do to catch a break around this racetrack? They've constantly been driving with somebody directly behind them. Of course, Boothby didn't really lose too much to Harteveld in front. It's 1.7. It's been just about that before. It seems to go in between 1 second to 1.7. And it's been that way for the majority of the race. Boothby did mount a charge very early, but that hasn't really amassed to anything. And now Rodriguez for Williams Esports now looking down to the inside, just faking a little bit to the inside before pulling back in line. That was not really a move that he was intending to do. It's just trying to drive in the mirrors of Boothby, try to get him to look and pay attention to what's going on.
Well, here are some other big important things we have to cover. Look at the timing screen. It is lit up in red with penalties for a handful of drivers, including a drive-through to the number 103 car of Southall. That's critical because he is 4th in silver and he was fighting for the class podium. So that is going to be a pretty major race implicating penalty for the 103 cars to watch 3rd and 4th overall bounce through the curbs there at that first chicane. So you see Southall hitting pit lane to serve that drive-through at this point, but a lot of of penalties. It has been a messy day out there from a driver standpoint. A lot of penalties for avoidable contact and speeding in pit lane, that sort of thing. So looking to future rounds, drivers are really going to have to focus on keeping clean races, not only from a strategy perspective, but from a race conduct perspective, because the stewards have been very, very busy and are tossing out penalties all over the place.
Well, there is one penalty that the stewards hasn't had to hand out, but has been handed out by the track limits as well. Molly has got themselves a drive-through for track limits, and we talked a little bit about that in the pre-race. It hasn't really shown itself until this point, but unfortunately that will end the majority of the 731's day, racing for points, the potential for points anyway, gone with that. And of course, just to reiterate, that was a track limits penalty, not a race control one.
Yeah, that's something that we talked about briefly after the green flag as well, is that, those are completely avoidable penalties, and this is a track where it's pretty easy to get them on corner apex, not so much on track out. There's a lot of gravel and grass here. When we head to some of the other tracks we're going to this season, really easy to get them when you track out to the edge of the track, like you see there with Kondaxioglu at the exit of turn 1. So something that is completely in the driver's control, and that's something that is going to hurt at the end of the day when you look back at things you could have changed. But right now, Kondaxioglu is chasing Cardin Liu. This is a battle for 9th at the moment, 94 and 56. HPD SRO America and of course Kondaxioglu in the 56 for FFS Racing. These two have battled extensively before, and they're continuing that in the 2022 Mobileye GT World Challenge America Esports Championship.
Yeah, of course, Kondaxioglu is trying to get as many points as humanly possible here. You never know. Of course, Kondaxioglu, the champion from a season ago, knows that some days it's not always going to be about chasing podiums, is it? Sometimes it's just about getting as many points as you possibly can and moving on to the next round. You never know. The next round could be a more favorable one for your track, your driving skill, your skill set, whatever it is. So you just got to get what you can get. And if Kondaxioglu can continue here in the final 9 minutes, gain another spot, at least one more spot, that's a few more points that they otherwise wouldn't have. And you never know. Like we said, last year, separated by only a handful of points at the end of the season, 9th place versus 10th, after 5 rounds, that could be your championship difference maker.
Every pass counts, every moment counts, and there's only a handful of moments left in this race. 8 minutes and 40 seconds remaining here at Circuit Zolder for the Mobileye GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. Race control incidents involving the 15 and 42, no further action. That has been the exception, not the rule today in terms of the penalties. But moving back, battle for 9th and battle for 3rd are both hotly contested at the moment, and points on the line. And as you mentioned, they're so critical. Every pass could be the difference between you winning the championship and coming up short at the end of this 5-round season. So Kondaxioglu on attack. So is Rodriguez for Williams Esports in the 124 for 3rd. Lots of chess matches about to kick off here. A lot of strategy moves being planned here for the final 8 minutes.
Sure is. It's also risk versus reward. We didn't really talk about that, but just to touch on that, does Kondaxioglu feel that the pass on Liu is warranted only shortly at this point if the opportunity is presented to themselves? Because otherwise, you can get yourself into trouble if you try a little bit too hard. Incident involving cars 19 and 103 on lap 22. 5-second time penalty for car 103 for causing a collision. Stewart still not done, Kyle.
Yeah, and that 103 already had a bad day, so just going from bad to worse at this stage of the race. Not the place that they wanted to be. You want to be quiet to the stewards. They don't want to hear your name mentioned at all in the steward's office until after the race when they're congratulating you. If you're a topic of discussion a couple of times, it's going to be a pretty bad day for you. 7 minutes to go here in the first round of the season. Kondaxioglu closing in on Liu. 0.3 of a second is the difference here. And the battle for 3rd we're moving into here. This is another 0.2 of a second battle. The white and blue Bentley chasing the pink and black Porsche. Boothby has been looking out the mirrors this entire race. He has got to be worn out at this point, and this is the stage when you can make mistakes when you're focused out the rear of the car, not out the front.
It sure is. We saw Boothby earlier have to go very defensive. You would suspect George would do the same thing here at the end of the race to preserve 3rd. You went this far, no need to give up now. The question is, how forceful will Rodriguez get with the back of Boothby for 3rd place? It's basically like hanging a stake out on a fishing hook out in front of you, isn't it? A little bit. You see 3rd right there. That's a podium spot. That's a pin in your hat, of course, for the overall anyway. And Boothby's not going to give it up, but my question isn't, is Boothby going to give it up? Because obviously he's not going to. We've seen his defense. It's what Rodriguez is willing to do. We've not seen him have to get aggressive so far.
Well, what we haven't seen a whole lot of yet is traffic being in the way, and we're about to get into some pretty heavy lap traffic, so Boothby is already potentially planning ahead with where he's going to position this car, because Rodriguez can pretty easily trap Boothby behind a lap car and use it as a pick in some of these tighter corners. So this is going to get interesting in the final 5 minutes. You can't expect lap cars just roll over for you. There, see blue flags are waving. Those are not compulsory flags here in SRO competition. They are just advisory and informative, and hopefully that guy in front of you, that guy or girl in front of you is willing to give you a position. And look at this, big curb hops here as Boothby still on the defense from Rodriguez.
Most of the cars are electing to adhere to blue flags. Like Kyle said, it's not what you would call compulsory. It's a courtesy style flag. But that being said, nobody here wants to be the cause of a late race position change. Nobody wants to hear it from the driver they inconvenience to, is the other side of that coin. But nevertheless, everyone being very smart, as you would expect at this level of competition.
So, keen eyes might be discovering while we're chatting about these two drivers, don't look too far behind, because there's a blue and black Bentley Continental right behind. It's Felipe in the number 88. He's in the mix now. It's a 3-horse race for third place, and here comes Schill back into the party in the 89 BMW. So now it's a 4-horse race for third place in the final 4.5 minutes. At any moment, we could bring all those cars into 2 ahead here as we get into some traffic. So Boothby's going to have to be really careful not to stack this group up and have more drivers hunting for him.
Kyle, I'm going to tell you something. I'm often asked, what would you rather be, the car defending or attacking? I always say neither. I want to be the third car.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's what Felipe is right now, that third car in line. There's the pink Porsche, then the white and blue Bentley, and then it's the blue and black Bentley just behind, and that is a position of strength. The thing that he can't focus on, Felipe, that is, he can't focus too much on what's happening in front of him without defending from the 89 as well, because Schill is still coming 8/10 behind Felipe. So with 3.5 minutes to go, any of these drivers, you could throw them into a can and shake them up and see which one comes out the other side, because I think we're going to have a little bit of chaos here at the end. These guys have been too nice to each other in this race. There's too much on the line here to just be fighting so calmly. I think we're going to see Rodriguez make a move late in the race, and that's going to set off the explosion behind him.
I have a feeling. I think we all get that feeling in our gut. It's going to come, but will George Boothby allow that to happen? He's done a decent job of keeping Rodriguez just far enough behind that a lunge would be excessive, but every straight, that Bentley is chewing into that gap that the Porsche makes up in the corners. You got to love brand recognition. You got to love differences in the cars, because it gives you this nice back and forth racing. And this is Gabriel Felipe, the Oak Racing Team 88, the Brazilian driver, just sort of waiting in the wings right now. Nothing else Felipe can do. This is all Felipe has, hoping that Rodriguez gets up there and gets beside Boothby and gives him a shot. Look at him with the busy hands in the cockpit of that car, just trying to keep pace, knowing that they're likely going to be a fight up front. And if anything should go wrong, hey, maybe you get one spot. If you're really lucky, you might get them both.
All he can do is do the best he can do with them in the moment and hope that the two in front get held up or go to battle. Big curb jumps here through the chicanes, a bit of a bad bounce. You can see the car kind of skip across the surface like a rock on a lake. And then to the second chicane. This one's a trickier one because you're turning and braking as you enter the braking zone for this. Warning to car 44 for contact on lap 31. That was about 7 laps ago. With 2 minutes and 10 seconds remaining, depending on where Luke Whitehead is, he's just up the road. We should have approximately 2 laps to go, but we'll have to see where the timer is when we get back around to the stripe.
I'm sorry, was that a smile by Gabriel Felipe right there? Absolutely calm and cool and collected. Knows where they stand in this race. Well, here comes the leader coming to get the, actually, yes,
2 to go.
Get the white flag. Or is it? Oh, no, it is. Yeah, it is 2 to go.
Yep.
It's going to be close.
It was about 1 minute and 40 remaining. The lap time's here just under 1:30. So
right,
we'll have 2 laps left in this race, as it was pretty close as Whitehead took the 2 laps to go signal there into turn 1 and escaping the gravity of his teammate Harteveld in the second position, 2 seconds back. It's a further 2 seconds back to find this battle for third, which it seems to exclude Schill at the moment. It's kind of turned back into a 3-driver race, Porsche versus the 2 Bentleys. And when you saw that smile, I think that's just knowing he's got prey lined up and he's ready to pounce.
Yeah, I think that might be it, knowing that, hey, if something happens in front of me, I might be able to get some of the scraps here, but very nicely done by Boothby and Rodriguez. They're not making a move. I almost feel like Felipe is the most aggressive in this situation, just trying to keep up and running up the back of him. But as I say that, Rodriguez right on the back of Boothby again. They know they're going to get one more lap after this. One more lap. I assume race car logic dictates you make the move at the last possible moment to keep your opponent from being able to have a chance to get back by you, but this is leaving it very late if Rodriguez is willing to do this. Now, the other thing is Rodriguez willing to sit there and take third in pro and not worry about the overall podium? Now, that's a question we haven't asked, and I'm very curious about, but as of yet, no move being made by the 124.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of planning going on. I think if you wait too long, though, and if you're even choosing to wait, you're going to put yourself in a tricky situation if that opportunity eludes you. For Luke Whitehead, he enters turn number 2. It is the white flag, the final lap around here in the Mobileye GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. 1.7 seconds clear of his teammate, but for third. This is the battle we've been watching this entire race. Boothby and Rodriguez battling for second place in that pro category. Rodriguez, though, already secured a podium if he can finish in class in this position. The only car that would be a threat to him is the number 89, 2 cars back, who took a swipe at that final chicane, couldn't get it done. So now, the last couple of corners here, Jesse, here they come. Now, Rodriguez falls off the tail of Boothby, has Felipe right behind him here.
What will they do? Will Felipe make a move around the outside, shading that way, but can't get it down into the chicane? I just feel like Boothby's a little bit too far away at this point. It might be desperation moves if Rodriguez tries to make a move on Boothby. Felipe not able to draw back up to the back of Rodriguez after an excellent first chicane, and absolutely not even going wide is Boothby, taking the very normal line. I feel like Rodriguez driving in his mirror all of a sudden. That will release Boothby as he has gone up the road a little bit. I don't think you're going to see a fight here.
I don't think he's going to get there, but checkered flag for the race leader from the green to the checkers. It's Luke Whitehead in the number 21 for the GTWR R8G Academy. He wins the first of 5 rounds of the 2022 Mobileye GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. His teammate, Chris Harteveld, will win as well in the silver category. So pro and silver both go to GTWR R8G Academy. That was a very, very strong run. Boothby rounds out the podium in the overall order, and behind them, they're still coming back to the checkers. Look at Condexioglu right behind Cardin Liu, 9th and 10th overall for that duo.
Well, what can you say? Just a fantastic day for the GTWR guys. They ended up 1 and 2. You can't do much better than that. Chris Sievert will come home P14 on the day, right behind a couple of cars side by side, mind you. And the squabbling over the minor positions commences. Harry Spears here looking to get one more back. Will already get Alvarado back due to the 15-second penalty, but maybe trying to get that back in earnest here.
Man, what a disappointing day for the 285 as he took a swipe at Alvarado there.
He got him.
He got him. Not the way I was hoping he would get him. Looked like there was some pretty major contact down there into turn number 9. But for Spears, look at the purple next to that position. That means that he was the fastest out there today in that Race Anywhere Sim Sport Bentley. But it's going to be a 24th place for him, looks like, at the moment. So that's just not where he could have been. The pace was there. I think putting it all together was not, unfortunately. So there's a lot of potential in this team and driver, and I think as we move throughout the season, it's a car to watch, but they need to stitch the race better together than that.
Look at this. Love to see this cool down formation flying by GTWR. A lot of other cars finishing on the podium as well, joining in. It's been a lovely first outing for almost everyone in that picture, you have to say. And for some drivers, like you said, Kyle, it's been a frustrating open to the championship, hasn't it? And now we look to race 2, where they hope to rectify all the wrongs. But man, what a race we had today.
A fantastic race, and there was a couple of drivers that really slid under the radar there we didn't talk about almost at all. William Hendrickson in the 757 for the Jean Alesi Esports Academy. He was in the top 10. So was Morera in the number 41 for Williams Esports. Just so many drivers that kind of snuck under our radar as they just had a quiet day. But for those that had a quiet day, those were the good days, Jesse. There was a lot of drivers that we saw tonight, a bunch that I think looking back in the broadcast, they wish they weren't on so much because they were usually getting turned around or getting run into or having a speeding penalty. So a lot of mistakes made today by drivers, but I think it's all a learning experience in this 2022 championship. You need to have a good day, secondary to having a clean day. If you have a clean day, you're probably going to have a good day, and I think that's something that drivers will take with them and the teams will talk about after this race. But for the most part, really competitive. Up front, though, Luke Whitehead putting on a show and teammate Chris Harteveld in silver. Not even close. They really had the cover on the field this week.
Yeah, without a doubt, those were the two classes of the field, and of course it's sort of fitting that one was pro and one was silver after all, but they get to take those big trophies back home, don't they, and celebrate with their team. They return victorious. And you're talking about under-the-radar drivers. You know, some drivers love to be that kind of wily under-the-radar. We're not paying too much attention. And I find it takes a little bit of the pressure off. And now, with some of those having an excellent result today, they've set themselves up into excellent championship contention.
All right, we've got our race winner, Luke Whitehead, here joining us. Luke, today, from the green to the checkered, you had this race in control in your number 21 for the GTWR R8G Academy Porsche. That was phenomenal. You saw a lot of it in your mirror. Take us through your race today, and your teammate picking up silver had to be a good day for you and your team.
Yeah, it was absolutely perfect. It doesn't get any better than 1-2 for the team. We came into this admittedly a little bit nervous, given that we'd struggled a little bit in testing. We knew that the Bentley would be ultra quick, from our experience, but we just somehow got a 1-2 in qualifying, which took us both equally by surprise. And I made a mistake in quali, and the lap could have been or should have been better, but I can't complain. P1, P2 for the team. Looking out both qualifying, pro, silver, it's just awesome. I really can't put it into words at all.
I mean, this season we've seen, another increase in the general pace of the field. As we've seen season over season, it just seems to get harder and harder to run up here at the front, but you and your team have consistently been there. This season, do you feel like your team has any advantage having done this championship before and kind of been in contention, or do you think there's some new faces that could pose a challenge to you?
To be honest, I think everyone up the front is extremely close. You really can't count anyone out. Obviously, you've got the really strong Yas Heat team who are ultra strong in their own right. You've got Williams Esports up the front. You've got so many strong, heavy hitters, and I just think what won it for us today was just working with the team. We came into it kind of working together on a setup with about 4 or 5 of us working on it, and we were just relentless trying to find that edge. And I've also got to give a shout out to Felipe Boquita as well for helping us with the setup. Obviously she's in R8G racing in Asia, so the team element really helped. I think having the support of Chris up the front as well was awesome. Obviously, regardless of who was P1 or 2 in that situation, I think the goal would have been the same, to back up the guy who's leading and make sure we secure a 1-2, and it worked. It worked completely as it should have done, as we wanted it to. So, yeah. But as I say, going into the next round, there's it's a long old season. There's a lot of different circuits, and there's so many really hard hitters. I would not count anyone out, and it's not going to be an easy ride. But we've put ourselves in a good position. We just got to keep fighting as we are.
About as good as a position as that's going to get. First and second for your team, Luke. Congratulations. Certainly a very strong start to the season, and we'll see you at Silverstone on May 28th.
Certainly hope so. Take care.
Thank you. We'll see you later. Wow, it's interesting to hear, how much team effort there was in that win there, Jesse, and that's something that's going to benefit them, I think, throughout the season. If they can hit the setup on the head right out of the gate, they're going to put themselves in a good spot.
Yeah, it certainly is, and all smiles from Luke Whitehead there, and it sounded a little bit surprised for me as well, about winning that way and qualifying on pole. Said he had a little bit more in the tank, didn't need it today, was absolutely the class of the field, well deserved.
Certainly was, and playing rear gunner for him today for his teammate Chris Harteveld. Chris, a phenomenal run for you and Luke, and both of you winning your respective classes. You had to look a little further down to find another silver car, but that was a pretty strong run for you today. Is there anything more that you had for your teammate there, or do you think that you and the team accomplished everything you guys set out to do? Because to me, it looks like that was pretty picture perfect.
First of all, hi everyone. Good evening. Yeah, I mean, this is the perfect way to start a championship, of course. Yeah, regarding your question, I think we had pretty similar pace, but yeah, I didn't want to take that many risks, to be honest, because this was just the perfect way to start.
And starting up towards the front obviously reduces that risk, but Zolder presents an interesting challenge because it's so narrow and there's so many tall curbs and things that get yourself into trouble. So how important is it for your team to be perfect from the driving side, to stay in the lines, to stay off the curbs? Is that an important part of your weekend, or is it more about kind of nailing the qualifying, the strategy, and the setup?
Yeah, for sure, because the curves on this track, yeah, if you take them wrong, you're dead, basically. You're in the wall. So yeah, it's really important to have a good setup. And yeah, your driving has to be perfect, because if you're offline in the chicane, and you're going to be flying into the wall. So,
well,
yeah.
Certainly didn't do that today. That was a really strong run for you and the team. And as you look forward to Silverstone in this next round, what changes, if any, do you make to kind of run even with Luke? Do you think that you're capable of running up there and getting past him? Is there a discussion over what happens in terms of the Pro and the Silver Championships? Is there any priority on either driver, or are you both just competing with each other and hoping that you 1-2 every time?
Yeah, we're of course competing with each other, but yeah, we're not taking too many risks, because I'm in Silver class, of course, and if he's in Pro and he's leading and I'm second, I'm not gonna really fight him too hard, to be honest.
Well, it seems like the team is on the same page, and a great way to start the season, Chris. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You and your teammate really crushed it this week, and we'll look forward to seeing you at Silverstone in about a month.
Yeah, for sure. Looking forward. Have a nice evening.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
So for GTWR R8G Academy, Jesse, that team absolutely executed today. There was a lot of teams that didn't, and I think the critical part here was look at the day that those two drivers in the Porsches had. They qualified up front. They ran up front. They were consistent. And you know what we never saw? We never saw them on camera going off the course at all. They kept it within the bounds and just had quiet days and had the pace to go with it. That's how you win a championship. Even though it's round one, it'd be hard not to pick those two drivers as favorites.
Well, I like Chris Hartveld's attitude. Knew that they were a silver car set. I didn't really consider challenging my teammate up front. I didn't stand to gain much from doing that. Knew their place, didn't want to risk anything, drove fairly conservatively, said Chris Hartveld. So that's what you get, and that was the difference between the top two and some of the other drivers in the field today. And of course, also being really fast helped out a lot. But excellent attitude by Chris Hartveld, and a well-deserved run for them as well.
Well, our first race in the 5-round championship for the Mobileye GT World Challenge Esports Championship is complete. Round 2 is at Silverstone on May 28th. Big thanks again to our partners that make this all happen. Of course, Mobileye, Fanatec, Asus ROG, Pirelli, Rebellion, and all the others that make this possible. A big thanks as well to AK SimGrid and SRO Esports, as well as Kunos and Assetto Corsa Competizione. I'm Kyle Heyer with Jesse Lee. On May 28th, we'll see you for round 2 from Silverstone for the Mobileye GT World Challenge America Esports Championship.